For over 1,000 years, the Roman Empire was the superpower of the ancient world, covering over 5 million square kilometers. It reached its peak in 117 CE under Emperor Trajan, stretching from England in the northwest to Iraq in the east. But this enormous size became its biggest weakness. By the late 3rd century, the empire was plunged into chaos, a period known as the Crisis of the 3rd Century. Emperors were rapidly made and unmade by the army, and the economy was shattered by hyperinflation. Along with these, a series of devastating plagues swept through the population, killing an estimated 10 million people. To save the fragile empire, the soldier Emperor Diocletian made a radical decision in 285 CE. He concluded that the empire was simply too big for one man to rule. Therefore, he divided it into two halves: the Latin-speaking Western Roman Empire, governed from Milan, and the wealthier Greek-speaking Eastern Roman Empire, ruled from the ancient city of Byzantium, which was later named as Constantinople. This division was a strategic masterstroke that bought the empire another century of life, but it also created a growing divide. The West, with its older farms and land-based economy, began to weaken. The East, in contrast, was a hub of trade, its cities bustling and its treasury filled with gold. They were slowly becoming two separate worlds. Over time, the Western Empire's decline began to accelerate. Its economy was trapped in a vicious cycle. It had long frontiers for which it needed a massive army, and to pay for the army, the state raised taxes to crushing levels. This drove farmers and artisans into poverty, which further shrank the tax base. Along with this weaker economy, the character of the legendary Roman legions changed. The empire began to rely heavily on Germanic mercenaries, known as foederati. These men were brave fighters, but their loyalty was to their own chieftains instead of Roman Empire. On top of these internal crises, the empire faced a terrifying external threat. Around the year 370 CE, a group of fierce nomadic horse warriors from Central Asia, known as the Huns, began moving west. Their terrifying appearance and unmatched speed sent the Germanic tribes living north of the Danube into a panic, pushing them toward the Roman frontier. In 376 CE, a massive group of Goths, fleeing the Huns, arrived at the Danube River, the frontier of the Roman Empire. They begged for safety and permission to cross the border. The Eastern Emperor, Valens, agreed. He thought he could settle them on unused land and then recruit them into his armies. But the plan went horribly wrong. Corrupt Roman officials such as Count Lupicinus and Commander Maximus cheated the Goths. They sold them food at outrageous prices, even dog meat, and demanded the Goths hand over their children as slaves. In exchange, this cruel treatment was a fatal miscalculation. Eventually, the Goths rebelled. For 2 years, they rampaged through the Roman provinces of the Balkans, plundering the regions now known as Bulgaria and Serbia. The crisis reached its peak in August of 378 CE at the Battle of Adrianople. Emperor Valens, impatient for a victory, attacked the Gothic force before reinforcements from the Western Empire could arrive. It was a catastrophic disaster. The Roman infantry was surrounded and annihilated by the Gothic cavalry. Emperor Valens was killed, and his body was never recovered. This defeat was the worst Rome had suffered in centuries, and it forever shattered the myth of Roman invincibility. After this battle, the borders of the empire were open. The Goths started settling in and increasing their power within the empire. For the next 30 years, they grew increasingly powerful and rebellious. Their most famous leader was Alaric, a Visigoth king who had served in the Roman army. Alaric and his people wanted a permanent home and security. For years, he negotiated with the Western Roman Emperor, Honorius, who was based in the capital city of Ravenna. Alaric's demands were straightforward. He wanted land for his people to settle in the Balkans and the title of a high-ranking Roman general, but Emperor Honorius repeatedly refused. Finally, Alaric led his army from their territory in the Balkans, marching towards Rome. In 410 CE, they reached the walls of the legendary city of Rome. They broke in and sacked the city for 3 days. The world was stunned. For the first time in 800 years, Rome had fallen. The sack of Rome was a massive shock, but the Western Roman Empire didn't disappear overnight. For the next 66 years, it experienced a slow and painful decline. The empire's wealth came from its provinces, and one by one, they were lost. Britain was abandoned by the Roman army. Spain and Gaul were conquered by Germanic kingdoms. The most devastating blow came when the Vandals captured North Africa, the empire's richest grain province. Meanwhile, the emperors in Ravenna became puppets. The real power now lay with Germanic generals in the Roman army, who appointed and replaced emperors at will. The empire was a hollow shell, with no money, no reliable army, and barely any territory outside Italy. For years, this hollow shell of an empire stumbled on, until its final chapter began not with a war, but with a demand for payment. The emperor's father, a general named Orestes, had promised land in Italy to the multi-ethnic Germanic soldiers who made up the Roman army, but he failed to deliver. This angered the soldiers, and they rose up. They chose Odoacer, a skilled and ambitious Germanic general, as their new king. In 476 CE, with a force of roughly 10,000 soldiers, he marched from Pannonia into Italy. Odoacer turned their simmering rage into a decisive rebellion. He defeated and killed Orestes in a battle at Pavia, and then laid siege to the capital, Ravenna. The city fell quickly. Odoacer captured the teenage emperor Romulus Augustulus. He didn't kill the boy. Recognizing his youth and that he was a puppet, Odoacer spared his life and exiled him to a castle in Campania. The general then performed the most symbolic act of all. He packed up the imperial crown and robes and sent them to the Emperor Zeno in Constantinople. His message was simple. The Roman world only needed one emperor, and that was in the East. There was no longer any need for a separate emperor in the West, and with this, the Western Roman Empire was officially finished. Unlike the West, the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, survived longer. Its capital, Constantinople, was a fortress city protected by legendary triple walls. Its economy, based on a reliable gold coin, was strong. In the 6th century, under the great Emperor Justinian, the empire even launched a breathtaking reconquest, briefly taking back Italy, North Africa, and southern Spain from the Germanic rulers. It was during this Renaissance that the stunning architectural marvel of the Hagia Sophia was built. For a time, it felt as if the Roman Empire would truly rise again. However, the Eastern Empire faced its own unending series of crises. The first major crisis was a series of brutal, epic wars against its great rival, the Sassanid Persian Empire. This was a conflict between two superpowers for dominance of the Middle East. The final catastrophic war between them was fought from 602 to 628 CE. In this war, the Persians nearly achieved the impossible. Under the Shah Khosrow II, the Persian armies overran the Eastern Empire's most valuable territories. They conquered the great cities of Damascus in 613 and Jerusalem in 614 CE, even capturing the True Cross, a holiest of Christian relics. By 619 CE, they had conquered Egypt, the empire's breadbasket. For a time, it seemed the Persian armies would reach Constantinople itself. However, the Eastern Roman Emperor, Heraclius, refused to surrender. In a daring and brilliant counteroffensive, he bypassed the main Persian armies and invaded the Persian heartland itself between 624 and 627 CE. He shattered a Persian army near the ruins of Nineveh in 627 CE, marching on the Persian capital of Ctesiphon. This stunning reversal forced the Persians to sue for peace. The war ended in 628 CE, with the Romans reclaiming all their lost territories. But it was a Pyrrhic victory. Both empires were left financially ruined and militarily exhausted. The war with Sassanid Empire was over, but a new great threat has emerged: the rise of Muslims. The newly established Muslim Caliphate, unified under the banner of Islam, had quickly taken control of the entire Arabian Peninsula. Then, in the 600s, they launched near-simultaneous attacks against both weakened superpowers. The first crushing blow fell on the Persians. At the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah in 636 CE, a Muslim army of about 30,000 faced 50,000 Persian army. The Muslims achieved a stunning victory, which opened the road to their magnificent capital, Ctesiphon, which fell the following year. Just a few months later, the Muslims turned their attention towards the Romans. Their first major battle was fought at Yarmouk in 636 CE. A heavily outnumbered Muslim force of approximately 25,000 warriors faced a Roman army estimated to be 40,000 strong. Through 6 days of brilliant mobile tactics, the smaller Muslim army encircled and annihilated the larger Roman force. This decisive victory led to the fall of Syria and Palestine. At the same time, on the Eastern Front, the Muslim victory at Al-Qadisiyah and the subsequent fall of the Persian capital, Ctesiphon, had broken the back of the Sassanid Empire. With the Persian front now stabilized, the Muslims turned their full attention to the rich province of Egypt, the breadbasket of the Eastern Roman Empire. In 639 CE, a Muslim army of just 4,000 men, led by the brilliant general Amr ibn al-As, crossed the frontier from Palestine. This small, highly mobile force defeated the larger, more static Byzantine garrisons. They won a key victory at the Battle of Heliopolis in 640 CE, shattering the main Byzantine field army in Egypt, which likely numbered over 20,000. After this victory at Heliopolis, they moved towards the fortress of Babylon, which fell after a prolonged siege in 641 CE. With the conquest of Egypt underway, the Persian Empire made one last, desperate attempt to challenge the Caliphate. In the summer of 642 CE, the two forces met at the Battle of Nahawand, a battle also known as Victory of Victories. In this battle, a Muslim force of roughly 30,000 soldiers defeated a Persian army of around 60,000 soldiers. This defeat was so total that the ancient Sassanid Empire, which had once rivaled Rome, collapsed completely and disappeared from the map. At almost the same time, back in Egypt, the Muslim army had laid siege to Alexandria, the capital of the Roman province of Egypt, which finally surrendered in 642 CE. With its fall, the entire province of Egypt fell firmly into Muslim hands. In less than a generation, the Eastern Roman Empire had lost its richest provinces: Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and North Africa. The empire had now lost its past glory, but it still struggled on for some time. Then, in 1071 CE, a new challenge emerged from the east: the Seljuk Turks. The Seljuks had formed a powerful, organized empire that had already conquered much of the Middle East, and they wanted to expand their empire further west, which led to their war with the Eastern Roman Empire. The two forces clashed at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071 CE. In this catastrophic defeat, the Roman army was not only crushed, but the emperor, Romanos IV Diogenes, was also captured. The battle shattered the empire's main defensive army and opened the floodgates for Turkish tribes to pour into Anatolia. The loss of this heartland was a devastating and permanent blow. Anatolia had been the empire's main source of food, soldiers, and tax revenue. Its conquest by the Seljuks meant the empire was cut off from the resources it needed to survive, a loss from which it would never fully recover. In addition to these external threats, the empire faced a devastating betrayal from within its own faith. In 1204 CE, an army of Western European knights, known as the Fourth Crusade, had been funded by the powerful merchants of Venice to sail to Egypt and fight Muslims. However, the Crusaders could not pay the Venetians for their fleet. Seeing an opportunity, the Venetian Doge, Enrico Dandolo, conspired to divert the crusade to Constantinople to settle a political dispute over the imperial throne and pay off the debt with plunder. Instead of fighting Muslims, the Crusaders turned on the Christian city of Constantinople itself. They brutally sacked the city for 3 days, desecrating churches, destroying ancient treasures, and carving the empire into petty Crusader states. Though the Romans managed to recapture their capital in 1261, the empire was now a mortally wounded shadow, stripped of its wealth and permanently fractured. For the next 2 centuries, the empire struggled on, but its power was gone. By the mid-15th century, it had shrunk to little more than the city of Constantinople itself, and a small part of modern Greece. It was breathing its last, a tiny Christian island in a rising Ottoman sea, until the final blow was delivered. By 1453, the young and brilliant Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, who had long coveted the magnificent city, moved to claim his prize. He arrived with a massive army of over 80,000 soldiers and the largest cannons the world had ever seen, determined to make Constantinople his new capital. The city was surrounded. The Roman defenders, led by the last Roman emperor, Constantine XI, numbered only 7,000. For 53 days, they fought with desperate courage against the overwhelming force. The final assault began before dawn on May 29, 1453. The exhausted defenders were overwhelmed. As the elite Ottoman janissaries broke through the gates, Emperor Constantine knew it was the end. He is said to have declared, "The city has fallen, but I am still alive." He then tore off his imperial robes, drew his sword, and charged into the enemy ranks. Vanishing into history, his body was never found. The last Roman emperor died as he lived, defending Rome to his final breath. And with his death, the Roman Empire, once the unchallenged superpower of the known world, vanished from the earth.